iDubbbz recently uploaded an apology video in which he expressed his regrets about his past videos, apologized to everyone he's ever made a content cop on, and even more. And people are extremely divided on this apology, making this one of the single most polarizing videos he has ever made. I think there's a lot to talk about here, and it's something that I feel invested in because, as I'm sure a lot of you can relate to, I kinda grew up with his videos. I was around 16 to 17 when he was at the peak of his popularity, and he was actually my first exposure to this whole side of YouTube. I still remember, one day, me and the other kids I went to school with were waiting outside in the morning, and people were talking about how much they loved the Keemstar Content Cop. And my friend was like, "Did you see the Content Cop on Keemstar?" And I was like, "Who the hell is Keemstar?" And the rest is history. But obviously 2016 YouTube is very different from the YouTube we know now. And there was a lot of content that was made during that era that wouldn't really fly today, not just because of YouTube's guidelines being stricter, but also in terms of the broader culture. And when people think about that whole era, iDubbbz is one of the people who instantly come to mind. But people can change a lot in 6 years, and iDubbbz is no exception to this. So that brings us to his apology. A lot of people have been very critical of it, basically saying he's weak and he's gone soft, but there's also been a lot of people supporting it and saying that he's just grown up and matured. There's a whole range of opinions people have, and I have a lot of thoughts on it myself. I also acknowledge that a significant reason why people don't like iDubbbz so much anymore is because of the way that he talks about his old fans, and some other stuff as well. But I'll get more into specifics towards the end of the video, since first I'm gonna focus on his apology. I won't react to everything, but I'll try to address the main points. Anyway, let's get into it.
I have made some cruel, hurtful content, and I need to acknowledge that, and I'm really sorry that it's taken me this long to acknowledge it. The content I'm talking about specifically are content cop videos and videos where I was just generally criticizing people for very lackluster reasons.
I mean, I still find the content cops to be entertaining, and there's a reason that they were as popular as they were. But you have to admit, they were at the very least quite harsh, at least most of them were. And if iDubbbz feels bad about that, then there's nothing wrong with apologizing for that. It's really up to him. He is the person who made the videos in the first place, and it seems like something that's been weighing heavily on him. But I do want to talk about how he said that he criticized people for very lackluster reasons. While there were criticisms he made throughout the series that you could argue weren't really a big deal, he mostly made good points, even if he was harsh in his approach. Either way, I don't think it's wrong for him to say that he's sorry for these videos, if that's how he feels.
I was being very bigoted in a lot of my videos, and I justified it because, I didn't think it was too serious. And I thought that people were going to see that I had good intentions, but that's so silly, Casual racism is still racism. Casual bigotry is still bigotry. And, I said a lot of things that I look back at and I cringe now, and I'm like, that is an awful thing to say. It doesn't matter what my intentions are. Like, if I'm hurting people, I'm hurting people.
So as I'm sure most of you know, iDubbbz was known to say slurs a lot. Now before we go any further, I think it's important to establish that there's a difference between somebody who's clearly very racist spouting slurs, and somebody who, as far as we can tell, just acted very edgy, for lack of a better word. And slurs are actually a central theme in the Tana Content Cop, in which iDubbbz basically makes the argument that we shouldn't hold the N-word on this pedestal, and that either all of it's okay or none of it's okay. And he also makes the argument that the more you say a word, the more it loses its power. But the way I see it, while it would be nice if we could collectively decide to take the power away from slurs, it's just not anchored in reality, at least not with the N-word. And regardless of whether or not you think saying slurs will take the power away from them, they still cause a lot of pain for people. They just have too much baggage. Now, as you might also know, another thing iDubbbz is known for is his nickname, NF, which is basically two slurs strung together. And I do feel like it's worth pointing out that he didn't just come up with this out of thin air. This originated because somebody else called him this and he just went along with it for comedy. And to me at least, it's clear that iDubbbz didn't say it with racist or homophobic intent. But at the end of the day, it's still two slurs strung together. And even though I don't think iDubbbz was this horrible bigot, you could argue that his videos unfortunately emboldened those sorts of people. And I think it's also fair to acknowledge the negative impact this had on another demographic. Immature, impressionable kids who were still in middle school or high school at the time, as well as the other kids who had to deal with them. I saw more people than I would have expected talk about how this affected their own experience and how it made kids feel like it was okay to say this stuff. And like iDubbbz said, despite what his intentions were, if you're hurting people, you're hurting people.
I've just always had this dumb philosophy that I'm not responsible for, my audience and how they behave beyond what content I put out. And that's stupid. And it's led to a lot of hate and a lot of bad outcomes. And I just want to make it clear that I am absolutely responsible for my audience.
I want to acknowledge the nuances of this idea that creators are responsible for their audiences because it's something I've heard here and there over the years, and I feel like it's something that can be misunderstood or taken too far. Now, if you're a YouTuber, the way you position and present yourself in your videos in terms of what you say and do will play a significant role in the type of fanbase that you're cultivating. And anybody with a big audience has to reckon with the fact that their words and actions will naturally have more of an impact on people. However, of course you're not completely responsible for your audience. And to anyone who thinks that creators are completely responsible for their audiences, that line of thinking does a disservice to not only the viewers but also to creators. For one thing, it treats the viewers like they can't think for themselves and form their own opinions and make their own decisions. But it's also something that can be unfairly weaponized against creators. For instance, if one person in your audience does something terrible and blames you, but you had nothing to do with it, of course you're not responsible for that.
I've clearly done a lot of damage. These videos have been up for a long time and have accumulated millions of views. I shouldn't be able to just make an apology video and walk away from it. This is something that I should live the rest of my life with, and I expect to.
Although I do think there are ways that his content has negatively affected people, like for example kids who were still in school at the time, he's talking about this like he's a hardened criminal who did these heinous crimes, and that's just not the case. And I don't mean to minimize his apology or needlessly criticize a man who seems to be trying to follow his conscience, but he almost talks about this like he did something unforgivable, and I just think it's kinda sad. He then talks about how he's going to donate the revenue that he makes from his apology.
Any revenue generated from this video, I'm going to match and donate to an organization that would have been particularly affected by the type of rhetoric that I've been spewing on this channel.
And he goes on to talk about how he feels that his past videos don't represent him anymore, and how he wants to distance himself from them. So he decided to enlist all of the content cops, and he made a Google Doc that he linked in the description that has the links to them. And in my opinion, this decision to enlist them, despite the fact that this would surely mean less money for him, does make him seem more genuine in his intentions. He then apologizes to everyone he's ever made a content cop on.
I'm sorry to everyone that I made content cop videos on. I still don't like the majority of you, and that's fine, but I can recognize that you did not deserve the hate and harassment that I sent your way.
I think his heart is in the right place. But there is something to say about the part in which he apologizes for the hate and harassment he sent towards the people he made videos on. First, I think it's fair to say that the way you talk about someone in a public video can certainly influence the way that the viewers of that video choose to interact with the person who is being discussed. But it's worth mentioning that he never told his audience to harass any of those people. There were hashtags in at least a couple of his videos, but we don't know if they were intended to be weaponized against the people he was covering, or if it was just for humor or to drum up hype. You could make the argument that by him just making those videos, he was the cause of people brigading his quote-unquote targets, but if you go with that argument, then you could say the same thing about other people who make commentary videos in general. And it becomes difficult to quantify when a creator is or isn't responsible for the actions of their followers, or at the very least, how responsible they are. iDubbbz then apologizes to Tana Mojo in particular, and to the minority groups who were affected.
I particularly want to apologize to Tana. Tana, I'm sorry. I should have never made that video. I harassed Tana in person and then harassed her online, and that's deplorable behavior. It's so stupid. I'm also sorry to all the black viewers and minority groups who had to put up with that video and put up with, the phrases. I said either it's all okay or none of it's okay. And that's just so dangerous and stupid.
And while it's good that he apologized, I do want to say it's not like Tana was undeserving of criticism or like she was a complete victim.
If iDubbbz broke both of his legs and lost all of his subscribers, I would be genuinely happy.
Even Tana seemed to take the content cop in stride.
In what way did you come for him? You called him out for saying the N-word?
In a horrible way. In like the meanest, like
you made a video?
No, actually my boyfriend at the time was obsessed with his videos, and then I heard like 30 seconds of it, like 10 seconds of it. I just hear him saying the N-word, this white guy saying the N-word. I've said it in the past. There are vines of me saying it. I don't even think
how
about
old
it.
were you in those?
I don't know the specific age, but like 13, 14, 15, it ranges.
Yeah, I really don't think we should be calling up 13-year-olds for saying the N-word, to be honest.
But I was stupid about it. I was really, and I tweeted him and was like, I can't believe you do that. Like, kill yourself. Like mean as shit. Like,
you were 16?
Probably like 16 or 17.
And you had a ton of
18,
followers, and you're calling out iDubbbz. That is pretty fucking hilarious.
Yeah, it was stupid. I was so wrong. And so then he just went low key, didn't reply to it. I deleted the tweet, and he made a content cop on me, and I fucking
like right after or what?
No, it was like a few months after he like came to my meet and greet. You know, you've like seen it all, yeah. But I deserved it 100%, and the content cop was good.
I feel like you've like swallowed up this like self guilt. At the end of the day, you were calling out a white dude for saying the N-word. That's pretty common, right?
But where did I have the room to call him out, you know?
I do want to point out she was 18 years old when she called him out, so she was an adult. And though this clip is around 5.5 years old, she also talked about it on her podcast recently.
I kind of think I like deserved that. And maybe that's like dark, like to say, but like I don't feel like I'm owed an apology. And maybe that's because I've accepted it so much that like people always ask me if you could go back in time and like make that never happen, like would you? And I always say no. I feel like it really shaped the course of my life. And so I guess because of how much I wouldn't go back in time and like change anything, I've never like felt like I like deserved an apology for that.
Now, I want to touch upon other things that affected how his apology was received. If he made this apology while he still had a pristine reputation, he would not have received this level of backlash. I mean, he likely would have still received backlash, but just not at this level. What antagonized a lot of people was the way he would talk about his old fans. This really started years ago when he made a video responding to fans who were getting on his case about the fact that his girlfriend at the time, who is now his wife, made an OnlyFans.
First of all, I'm not your fucking dad. Like, if you don't want to look up to me anymore, that's fine. I don't want you to look up to me.
Although he wasn't directing his frustration towards all of his fans, it certainly antagonized people, or at least made them lose respect for him. But more recently, there was this clip from when he was on Anthony Padilla's channel in which he says this.
I did not like the interactions that I had with fans. There were quite a few human beings that I interacted with.
In person?
Yeah, in person, that just sucked. They just sucked because I attracted a lot of people who sucked. Some people were, as I described earlier, were very much like antisocial, weird basement dwellers. And, you know, the one time a month that they come out of their cave is going to restock on supplies at Walmart, and they run into me, their favorite YouTuber.
Which is kind of the lifestyle you were living at the time.
Yeah, exactly. I don't blame them.
And what would they say? What would they do?
Things that I am certainly not going to repeat. I'm talking bad words. Cringy behavior that like maybe I'd do in a video because I got a camera pointed at me. There'd be some of that energy matched in person, and it's like, oh, maybe not.
So when you were on camera doing it, you felt like it was just for comedy, for entertainment?
Yeah, I mean, generally, yeah. And then, you know, it's just antisocial, weird behavior.
Now first, I'll speak for myself when I say I wasn't offended by this because it's not like what he said describes me. But with that being said, if you're gonna say that you attracted a lot of people who suck, you're gonna get backlash for that. Like, obviously a fan going up to him in public and shouting the N-word is a very uncomfortable interaction, but let's not act like most of your audience would do this. Again, the content cops and the other videos were entertaining. There are reasons why people enjoyed them so much that went beyond edgy man said the no-no word. And even in his apology, there's this part that comes off as patronizing.
I want this video to be an example and a lesson for you. You know, you can like content, but you can also think that it's irresponsible and it's hurting other people. So just tap into that part of your brain that's saying like, oh, okay, it's probably not that important that this video stays online because truthfully, I've seen it, I've experienced the content, but it's done a lot of damage. We can just let it go.
Like, there were better ways to say this. Particularly the parts that were like, I want this video to be a lesson for you, and tap into that part of your brain. There's also the fact that he had another controversy very recently involving creator clash and Froggy Fresh. And that's a rabbit hole in and of itself. Although it certainly is part of why he's receiving such a huge backlash right now. But all in all, this apology is definitely one of the most divisive videos I've seen on YouTube in a while. And as you can tell, I have mixed thoughts on this whole situation. But yeah, this is what I think. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.
Sometimes I feel like I'm alone when I would let you go. It's like this every day. I wish I could take it all away. These evenings always come and go, like feeling vertigo. It's alright, we're back home. It's alright, 'cause we already know.